The Harvard computers were a group of women who worked to classify and categorize the stars of the sky. It said that the program's director, Edward Pickering, hired mostly women because he believed that women could do the job just as good as men. Oh, and also he liked the fact that he didn't have to pay them as much, so he could have more women computers running more analyses. Over time, the Harvard computers came up with a few different ways to categorize stars. But eventually they landed on one developed by Annie Jump Cannon, who has one of the coolest names in history. Her system is still the basis for how we classify stars today with the OBAF-GKM system. Her mnemonic to remember the system was "Oh be a fine girl, kiss me." But I prefer "Only bad astronomers forget generally known mnemonics," but there's a bunch of good ones. Cannon was said to be able to classify over 200 stars an hour based on their spectral lines. And that's more than 3 stars classified a minute. Because when you look at the light from a star, you can tell what it's made of with a science called spectroscopy. You separate out its light with a prism and you measure where certain areas are more intense and certain areas are more shaded with absorption and emission lines. Like that's a classic hydrogen emission spectra, and that's the emission spectra of iron. Now back before 1925, we thought that the sun was composed of mainly the same stuff as Earth, in the same proportions. That was the year that British-American astronomer Cecilia Payne-Gaposchkin proposed that the sun was composed of hydrogen and helium in her PhD paper. Part of her realization was that a bunch of stars that seemed to be showing a bunch of different things in their spectral lines were actually just composed of hydrogen and helium, but they had different temperature, excitement, and ionizations. And with that, she found that the sun has 1,000 times more helium and 1,000,000 times more hydrogen than had been previously thunk. Then a few years after her PhD was published, some guy, Henry Norris Russell, figured out that she was right and published his own paper about it. His paper had a single mention of Cecilia Payne-Gaposchkin and how it agrees with her, but it didn't mention that she came up with this whole thing a few years ago. So for a long time, people believed that it was him who figured it out instead of Payne-Gaposchkin. And I think I told you that men taking credit for women's ideas was an unfortunate theme this month.